Charles Calomiris is our next guest. He's an economist known to be one of the prophets of Argentina's own sovereign debt crisis about a decade ago. He's now a professor at Columbia University. So, Charles, whenever anything gets politicized, particularly about the financial world, concern gets raised that we will see some sort of policy response, perhaps on a global basis here. That's certainly what the Greek prime minister sounds like he's calling for. Angela Merkel weighing in on this today. Let's take a step back, though. Are speculators responsible? Could they be responsible for the crisis that we're seeing play out in Greece?
Really, no. The CDS market always requires two parties in any transaction. So people can't just be on one side of the market causing trouble. But more importantly, the spreads that we saw in Greece at their worst in the CDS market were about 4%. Based on what we know from the history of sovereign crises, given the current fundamentals in Greece, if anything, that's a very muted response in the markets. I would have expected a much greater response, and I think we're probably going to see a greater response. And
that would match really what we heard from Germany's financial regulators, saying they haven't seen the kind of distortion that would suggest that these accusations are true. But to play devil's advocate, I mean, I have received notes from people who've said that this isn't really a transparent market. You know, CDSs don't trade on an exchange, so it's hard to see, you know, price versus volume versus open interest and truly gauge what's happening in this marketplace. And because of that opaqueness, that you could see distortion of reality, that you could pay a higher price and thus make it look like you're timing, you're manipulating the market in some way. What about that argument?
Well, it's true that there can be opacity in over-the-counter markets of all kinds, so we don't know exactly what's going on. On the other hand, as I said, the size of the spread is not very large, and the bond spread itself, not just the CDS spread, was about the same magnitude. I really think this is just a case of trying to shoot the messenger, and I think that what we really need to focus on is the unsustainable situation that Greece has gotten itself into, with the highest consumption to GDP ratio in Europe, one of the lowest labor force participation rates in Europe, one of the highest government social protection expenditure rates in Europe, and deficits that have been not just high this past year, but outsized deficits for several years during the boom. And then, of course, the fraudulent accounting on top of it. I should also note that within the Eurozone, Greece has the worst corruption score according to Transparency International, which is a problem because what it's telling you is the institutional quality of the Greek government for reforming itself is very low.
Yeah, and there are questions now about those countries that have exposure to some of those Greek financial institutions, emerging Europe in particular.
Bulgaria in particular.
Exactly.
Because of the links to the banking system. If we do get a full-blown currency crisis in Greece, even banks that are in good situation in terms of their own solvency often experience runs during a currency crisis because people know the currency is going to be depreciated. They want to get their deposits out. That is a source of fragility in the banks.
So that question of contagion, so many eyes are turning now to Spain and to Portugal. Should they be more concerned about Bulgaria? You just highlighted that country.
No, I think from a fiscal standpoint in terms of the Eurozone, of course, Bulgaria is not a member of the Eurozone. The real concern right now, I think, should be on Italy. Italy is the country that is most like Greece in this current situation, the highest debt to GDP ratio, not as high deficits, so they can, with smaller changes, they can stop